The EU pushes to curb African migration, while leaders are still split on hosting refugees. A closer look at the conference where technology's future first appears. And entrepreneurs tap Nigeria's rising natural beauty care products market. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. European Union leaders are set to discuss on Thursday how to further curb immigrations from across the Mediterranean. Donald Tusk, EU Council President, has proposed creating a new financing tool in the bloc's next multi-year budget to stem illegal migration, replacing the ad hoc calls for money that EU states have seen since the arrivals peaked in 2015. Despite heavy criticism by human rights groups that it is aggravating the suffering of refugees and migrants on the southern shore of the Mediterranean, the EU is sticking to its policy of providing various kinds of assistance to the governments and UN agencies in the Middle East and Africa in order to prevent people from making the dangerous trek north. While implementing these plans in some places, notably lawless Libya, is proving difficult, all EU states and institutions in Brussels agree on the approach. However, the question of how to handle refugees who have made it to the EU is as divisive now as it was 2 years ago. Now, the U.S. Embassy in Ethiopia says it is troubled and saddened by reports of violence that has resulted in deaths and injuries in the town of Chelenko and at several universities over the past 2 days. In a statement, the embassy called on the Ethiopian government to ensure the safety of all Ethiopian citizens and hold accountable those responsible for violence. For more on the situation, journalist Eskinder Fru joins me by phone from Addis Ababa. Eskinder, hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. And first, can you let us in on how many people are known to have been killed by up to this point?
According to the spokesperson for the Oromia regional government, 15 people have been killed and 14 others have been injured.
And what exactly led to these killings? We know there's been instability in that region, but what led to this?
You know, this is part of the ongoing conflict between Oromia and Somali regions, the two largest regions of the country. According to the spokesperson for the Oromia regional government, Adiso Araga, a person named Ahmadin Ahmed Asasa was shot dead by the Somali region on Monday, December 11. Such allegations are usually disputed by the Somali regional government, but that alleged killing prompted a protest by residents of Chelenko town in East Oromia in East Ethiopia. This is where the Oromia regional government accuses members of the Federal Army of shooting and killing 15 protesters and wounding 14 others. So this is a part of the ongoing conflict between Oromia and Somali regions. And this killing happened during a protest, by those, residents who were, opposing, the killing of one of their own on December 11th.
Now, Eskinder, what is the government in Addis Ababa doing to make sure it can stop these killings between communities?
The government has always been, saying that it has been in discussion with the elders and also local communities there. Conflict has not stopped so far, and there is seems always to be a trigger for the conflict to come again. But this time, I think this is. The conflict has continued in that area, and the federal government has not issued a statement yet on what happened yesterday, on the killing of 15 protesters.
Well, we'll keep watching developments there. Eskinder, thank you very much. Eskinder Fru is a journalist based in Addis Ababa. in Ethiopia. Now to West Africa. Liberia's Electoral Commission has set December 26th as the new date for the delayed presidential runoff vote. Electoral Commission Chairman Jerome Korkoya says campaigning can start immediately but must end by December 24th. Former soccer star George Weah faces Vice President Joseph Boakai in the poll that was held up for several weeks by a court challenge by the candidate in round one. The winner replaces Ellen Johnson Sirleaf as president in what will be, if all goes smoothly, Liberia's first peaceful handover of power in 70 years. Now, the Supreme Court last week dismissed a complaint from third place finisher Charles Bromskin's Liberty Party, which said fraud had undermined the first round vote in October. Now, a top counter-terrorism official in Bangladesh said on Wednesday the man accused of detonating a pipe bomb in an ISIS-inspired attack in New York City's subway tunnel does not appear to have any known links to militant groups. Monirul Islam said investigators have interviewed Akaid Ullah's wife and her parents as part of their probe. The 27-year-old Ullah is due to make his first court appearance on Wednesday. U.S. prosecutors have announced terrorism charges against him.
There are instances following these types of attacks where the intelligence we develop at the time may dictate that we locate, detain, and interview individuals in order to ensure the safety of the public and the safety of the law enforcement personnel conducting those operations. Our teams use appropriate, reasonable, and lawful methods to accomplish these goals, but to be clear, our teams will move with speed and move with purpose.
Well, the charges against Ullah include bombing a public place and using a weapon of mass destruction. Each charge carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. Now, a new exhibition aims to show how the art world has responded to the global changes since the terror attacks in the United States on September 11, 2001. Age of Terror, Art Since 9/11 at London's Imperial War Museum brings together 40 artists from around the world whose works reflect on conflict and society since that day. Henry Ridgewell reports.
Images so familiar, yet still with the power to transfix, to horrify, and the exhibition curators hope to force reflection on all that has happened in the 16 years since 9/11. The exhibition opens with 912 front page by German artist Hans-Peter Feldmann, 151 newspaper front pages published the day after the terror attacks.
In the internet age, we're bombarded with images, and that feeds into how artists respond as well. And the fact that we're so readily informed about global events, and that the access to that information is so immediate, feeds into how artists research and how artists respond.
Several of the works are provocative. Fellow German Fabian Knecht wore a suit covered in dust that had been worn by a survivor of a suicide bomb attack in Iraq, and filmed himself walking through the streets of New York, an echo of the survivors of 9/11. British brothers Jake and Dinos Chapman aimed to address the continuation of violent conflict, using mounds of plastic Nazi figurines to evoke the World Trade Center Twin Towers. Indian artist Jitish Kalat offers a humorous take on the ubiquitous increased security checks since 9/11. Ai Weiwei, the Chinese artist who has faced constant persecution from Beijing, has a modern twist on the ancient marble sculpture with a model of a CCTV camera.
It gives the visitor a chance to take a moment of contemplation as they walk through the show, and it also reflects this continuing state of emergency that the world has been in since 9/11.
Among the most powerful works is this one by London-based Syrian artist Harer Sarkissian, who left his home country in 2008 and has watched from afar as Syria is consumed by civil war. Sarkissian constructed a perfect model of his Damascus family home, where his parents still live, and filmed himself destroying it with a sledgehammer.
Until now, I have this constant fear that something will happen. Whenever my parents call me, or they don't call me, I always start worrying. Because of this constant fear that I have in my head, I just wanted to break it. how to get rid of the fear by with breaking the model, let's say.
Tragically, for Sarkissian, life is imitating art.
After I did this video, I mean, the house was hit 4 times, and one of the times my parents were sitting and they're watching TV, and my father, all the windows were completely smashed, and my father, he was injured.
The curators hope the exhibition offers a modern update on the long relationship between conflict and art. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
In the U.S. nuclear weapons standoff with North Korea, leader Kim Jong-un is threatening to develop more nuclear weapons at a time the top U.S. diplomat is promoting face-to-face talks with Pyongyang aimed at denuclearizing the Korean peninsula. Kim's comment came during a 2-day munitions conference to celebrate Pyongyang's most advanced intercontinental ballistic missile, the Hwasong-15. The country's state-run television, KRT, on Wednesday aired a video of Kim delivering a speech and awarding medals to the missile scientists and officials at the close of the 2-day munitions conference. The Hwasong-15, which was a test launched late last month, has been largely perceived by analysts and government officials to have a range that can reach all of the mainland United States. U.S. President Donald Trump is facing a backlash after posting an insulting tweet about a Democratic senator from New York. Kirsten Gillibrand says the president is trying to silence her, calls rather, for his resignation following renewed allegations by women who claim that Trump harassed them sexually in the past. VOA's Zlatitsa Hoke reports the White House has denied the allegations.
Kirsten Gillibrand, a U.S. senator from New York and a Democrat, has angered Trump with the tweet calling on Congress to investigate allegations of sexual misconduct against him by more than a dozen women. In an early morning response on Twitter Tuesday, the president described Gillibrand as someone who would come to his office begging for campaign contributions and would do anything for them. Gillibrand described it as Trump's attempt to shame her.
I see it as a sexist smear. I mean, that's what it is. And it's part of the president's effort at name calling. And it's not going to silence me. It's intended to silence me. It's not going to silence the women who have stood up against him directly. And it's not going to silence the millions of women out there who have been speaking out every day since his inauguration about things they disagree with.
During the presidential campaign last year, several women said that Trump harassed them or sexually assaulted them in the past. Some of them spoke again on Monday, following a week in which 3 U.S. lawmakers stepped down over allegations of sexual misconduct.
Mr. Trump repeatedly kissed my cheeks and ultimately my lips in an encounter that has since impacted my life well beyond the initial occurrence.
Started to put his hand up my skirt, and that was the last time I wore a skirt traveling.
Beginning with Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein, a series of prominent men have been forced to resign this year after being accused of sexually harassing women. A group of Democratic women in U.S. Congress announced Tuesday they are calling for an investigation into Trump's alleged sexual misconduct.
Sexual abuse will not be tolerated, whether it's by a Hollywood producer, the chef of a restaurant, a member of Congress, or the President of the United States.
The White House on Tuesday dismissed claims that Trump's tweet about Gillibrand was sexist.
If you look back at past comments that this president has made, he's used that same terminology many times in reference to men. There's no way that this is sexist at all. This is simply talking about a system that we have that is broken, in which special interests control our government. And I don't think that there's probably many people that are more controlled by political contributions than the senator that the president referenced.
Trump won the presidential election last year despite allegations of sexual misconduct by 17 women. Zlatitsa Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook. So check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, an inside look at the conference that has been called the Barometer of Technology. Stay with us.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life, or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
Well, net neutrality and internet access impacts citizens around the world and how we consume content. With more details on what it means for local economies in Africa, it's Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting from the NASDAQ market site in New York.
Protests are popping up online to preserve net neutrality, or rules that ensure equal access to the internet, with numerous online companies posting calls for their sites for action to stop a vote later this week. The New York Times reports that the online protests are highlighting how the biggest tech companies such as Facebook and Google have taken a back seat in the debate about protecting net neutrality rules that prohibit internet service providers like AT&T and Comcast from blocking or slowing sites, or for charging people or companies for faster speeds of particular sites. For the most part, the large tech companies did not engage in these protests. In the past, the companies have played a leading role in supporting the rules. Let's take a look at Africa and how it's specific to the 54 countries there, starting with Liberia. Liberia has joined other nations in calling for a free, open, and safe cyberspace that will allow digital trade and other activities, which enhances sustainable economic development and growth. Foreign Minister Marjan Kamara said in a statement on behalf of the Liberian government at the Fourth World Internet Conference, quote, "The development of cyberspace continues to have a phenomenal impact on virtually every aspect of our human life. In fact, cyberspace now is a major contributor to the GDP of many countries around the world." So what she's saying is that the internet remains one of the major catalysts for economic growth and development, and provides greater opportunity for delivering education, healthcare, and environmental service across the continent. She stressed that cyberspace makes governments more effective and responsive to citizens' needs, and enables free exchanges of data and information. From the NASDAQ market site in New York, I'm Jill Malandrino, and this is Africa 54 Business News.
Well, every year, hundreds of the most famous names in high tech gather on the campus of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for the MTech conference, an opportunity to discover future trends in technology that will drive the new global economy. Now, this report by VOA's Evgeny Maslov is narrated by Bob Lavaroni.
For the IT community, MTech's annual conference at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology is an event equal to the Hollywood Academy Awards. Guests in the past have included the founders of Google and Facebook.
We talk about those technologies that matter and will have a biggest impact on society. And it is an opportunity for our editors to put our stories on stage and bring them to life.
The MIT Technology Review is the most authoritative voice in the global debate about technologies that can change the planet. Articles in this journal give readers an early look at technology and innovation to determine which ideas will be the most exciting for future development. One of this year's main topics has been artificial intelligence and the impact of related technologies on the economy, and also the social and ethical aspects associated with them. Chris Hammond is the head of the research department of the American company Narrative Science, which is engaged in the field of artificial intelligence.
I think artificial intelligence is still in its nascent phase. That is, that we have some systems that are kind of intelligent in certain areas, but that we don't have anything that looks like human intelligence or super intelligence or anything we would ever even vaguely be afraid of.
Hammond's colleague, Stanford University professor Andrew Ng, believes the speed of technology development in artificial intelligence is able to get ahead of expectations and change the whole industry very soon.
I think artificial intelligence is the new electricity. About 100 years ago, the rise of electrification transformed every major industry, everything from healthcare, communications, transportation, manufacturing. I think AI, artificial intelligence today, has advanced to the point where we see a surprisingly clear path for it to also transform every industry.
Interest in the MTech conference is growing every year. Together with international partners, the MIT Technology Review has recently hosted similar conferences in Singapore and in France. Earlier MTech conferences introduced advancement in social media, and in a few years those ideas conquered the world. This year's discussions about artificial intelligence may be the guideline for future development in that area. The MTech conference may soon be called the barometer of technology. For Evgeny Maslov, I'm Bob Leveroni, VOA News.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. As Nigeria goes natural, entrepreneurs take notice. We'll be right back.
French President Emmanuel Macron hosts a group of African and European leaders to drum up support for a new counter-terrorism force in the terror-plagued Sahel.
I have seen a future.
Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta calls for unity and says he's ready for dialogue with his competitors in driving the nation forward after chaotic elections last month that his main challenger boycotted. A court in Pretoria orders South African President Jacob Zuma to set up an influence peddling inquiry. We stay in South Africa, where ANC's longtime supporters like Reverend Frank Chikane warn that the African National Congress, the party of Nelson Mandela, is facing its biggest challenge in its modern history.
Welcome back to Africa 54. And here's what's trending. Pregnant women struggling to grab a seat on the famously packed Tokyo subway could find their salvation in a new app, connecting them with nearby passengers willing to give up their seat. Now, the service allows a pregnant woman to send a message when she wants a seat. The app will then look for generous pre-registered users who have said they are willing to give up their seats. If there is a match, the pregnant woman gets a seat map on the smartphone screen showing a partner's location. Developers hope to expand assistance to elderly and disabled people. Next up, prisons in India's southern tech hub of Hyderabad have launched a drive to make the city beggar-free. As part of the initiative, beggars are identified and rehabilitated in 2 shelter homes in local prisons. At these homes, the inmates are provided with beds, 3 meals a day, and an option to watch television. So far, 287 male beggars and around 150 female beggars have been brought to these shelter homes. Under the plan, anyone providing information to prisons control room about beggars will be rewarded with a cash prize of 500 rupees, that is an equivalent of $7.75. Well, and finally, while on a mission to find a suitable soap made from natural ingredients for her baby, Olesun Olarewaju decided to experiment and found herself producing a variety of soaps for all ages. She now runs a company that manufactures a range of beauty items. Rising incomes and demand for natural skin and hair care products has seen many businesses spring up in Nigeria and parts of the continent in recent years as the beauty market grows. In 2016, the beauty and skincare sector was valued at $620 million in Nigeria. That's according to Euromonitor International, global market intelligence publisher. And that is what is trending today. Now, during his stay in the northwestern U.S. state of Washington, National Parks traveler Micah Meyer got to see 2 of the state's most cherished icons from a vantage point a few people get. Now, the towering peaks were among the highlights of his experience in the Evergreen State, which he shared with VOA's Julie Tabo.
This is a pretty impressive entry view to come upon.
Highway 20 took National Parks traveler Micah Meyer through North Cascades National Park in Washington state.
So I had heard that the mountains are rugged, but this is far more dramatic than I imagined.
Micah said the North Cascades reminded him of another picturesque mountain range.
A lot of locals called this park the Alps of the United States because it looks very similar to the Swiss Alps.
But he was surprised to learn that unlike the famous European range, the North Cascades is among the least visited of America's 59 national parks. In part, Micah thinks, because it's so remote.
There's not a lot of hotels there. There's not a lot of roads that allow you to just drive up to the peak. If you want to get the good views, you got to hike.
Which is exactly what Micah did, an almost 6-kilometer hike up a harrowing trail. Despite weather-related challenges in the middle of summer.
There are still places here in the North Cascades where the trail is covered in snow, and the only way to get there is by walking across that snow.
Get ready for some amazing epic views because they're coming at you.
While in Washington, Micah also checked out two of the state's more popular peaks, this time from the air.
Off in the distance, you see Mount Rainier National Park. A little closer to us is Spirit Lake. And in the foreground, you can probably see steam coming out of erupted Mount St. Helens.
Mount St. Helens made headlines on May 18, 1980, with what many consider the most disastrous volcanic eruption in U.S. history. 57 people were killed in the blast, and the mountain was left with a giant crater on its north side. Mount Rainier, also an active volcano, is considered a Washington icon. It rises more than 4,392 meters above sea level, the highest point in the state.
It's this massive behemoth of a snow-capped mountain, and it catches you off guard and kind of takes your breath away because it's so huge and it's so gorgeous that the images are just spectacular.
And that made the mountains of Washington state a highlight of Micah's journey, no matter the viewpoint.
I don't think I could ever get tired of this.
Julie Tabo, VOA News.
Well, and that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. When something loses its original shape or form, it does not look very natural or comfortable.
Bent out of shape.
Hey, did you tell Greg about my dinner party?
Yeah, I did. I thought he was invited.
Well, now he's all bent out of shape because I didn't invite him.
I'm sorry. Can you invite him now?